Well. Jett, this is our last episode of the Heated Exchange. This is episode 20, brought to you all by Blitzalytics, and this is a very, very emotional day for me. I cannot believe we are in championship week. It is week 17. This is it. Like, how do we, Jett?
I think I get it's the last episode, temporarily, but you seem a little bit sad considering that our matchup this week is official now in the Blitz League. You and I will be facing off for all the marbles in the championship game. I took down David last week. I took care of business. Obviously, you're probably not wanting to see me in the championship based on the fact that I put over 200 points up last week. But I'm ready, and I'm sure you are too. And I'm glad we get to this podcast gets to culminate in our championship game against one another.
Jett, you know what? Even though I was hoping David would beat you secretly, I was hoping you would win, because nothing would give me more joy than taking you down in week 17 for all the marbles in front of everybody. I've been hoping for this day since we drafted our teams. I manifested this matchup ever since week 1. Even when you were 0-5, I was hoping you would do something. You know what? Jett, I got to give you a lot of credit. I talked a lot of trash to you at the beginning of the year. You were 0-5. I wrote you off. But I'm going to give you a lot of credit. Not many people could have gone out, done all the work you did to create a new team, go on an 8-game win streak?
Yeah.
Make the playoffs, win your first 2 matchups, make the finals, and just to lose when you're so close. Seriously, not many people really would do all that just to fall short. So I'm going to give you a lot of credit for your valiant efforts, my friend.
I mean, that's you think I'm going to fall short, but I've been looking at this matchup ever since it was official, and I really don't think it's going to be close. Just looking at comparing player by player. Why don't we run through it right now? Because I'm curious to see if people will agree with me. I think they will. Right now, I am projected to beat you 203 to 184. Not many projections out there.
I like it. That's the way I like it. I like being projected less, because typically teams are projected less. At least with me, some reason do so much better when a team is projected more. So I'm great with the matchup. But yeah, let's go through it quick.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Allen versus the Falcons against Kyler Murray, who's going up against Dallas. I clearly give the edge to Josh Allen there.
I would have to agree with that.
And then Austin Ekeler should be returning in this game, going up against the Broncos versus Ronald Jones going up against the Jets.
The awful Jets defense. I would actually take Ronald Jones this week over Ekeler, strictly because Denver defense, especially after getting gashed last week by Josh Jacobs, I imagine they're going to come out this week with a little more intensity. So, and Jets are a piss poor excuse for a defense. So
I still take Ekeler. I mean, Keyshawn Vaughn was taking a lot of carries in Tampa last week against the Panthers, and he was a lot more efficient with them. Right, also, you got to remember, Austin Ekeler missed last week, and he doesn't want to disappoint his fantasy owners again.
So I'm sure he doesn't. And I'm sure you have something to say about that, right?
I mean, I don't have anything bad to say. I mean, he's done everything possible. I mean, he's even helped out fantasy owners by telling who his direct replacement is. I mean, he's for fantasy. There's nothing we can do about him testing positive and missing games. But
he's the people's player. He does it for the people.
Exactly. That's why I think since he's for the people, he's going to ball out this week. Despite it is a tough matchup, I just think he's going to be ready to go.
I hope you're wrong. I hope you're wrong.
And then moving down the list, then we have David Montgomery going up against your Giants versus Darrell Williams against the Bengals, pending if CEH does play in this game or not.
Well, if CEH is out, frankly, I'd still take David Montgomery. Because the Giants are just awful. Like, they're worse than the Jets. And it hurts me to say. It actually brings me pain to say that. But it is true. The Giants are terrible. I don't know why I keep watching them. I do. I have to, but it's not. They don't make it easy. Matter of fact, they make it really goddamn difficult. So I expect David Montgomery to run right through them this week.
Yeah, I mean, another advantage in my end here. It's just really you're really getting a good sense of how both of our teams are constructed and how they've evolved over the course of the year.
We're just getting started, my friend.
Austin's issues at running back have really, really increased over the years. So
let's keep going down the list. Keep going right down.
Yeah, so then let's keep doing that then. I got my quarterback wide receiver stack. Tail end of that is Stephon Diggs going up against the Falcons. Great matchup there versus Tyler Lockett, who's going up against the Lions.
But again, I gave the edge to Diggs. So right now you're up 4-0 right now. 4-0.
4-0, and then we go back down to T. Higgins of the Bengals, who's playing up against the Chiefs, who had a monster game last week. I don't think he's going to replicate a 40-point outing, but it's looking more and like that he's the clear number one wide receiver on this Bengals team right now. And for you have Brandon Cooks, who has a pretty tough matchup against the 49ers.
You know what? I'm actually going to roll here with Brandon Cooks, who's had a couple weeks off to recuperate, and T. Higgins goes up against the Chiefs, who I think are going to lock down the whole Bengals offense. Their defense is playing out of their minds, and I think T. Higgins is going to have a very, very down week. Ooh. So, and I think Cooks is in for a very good week, considering David Mills is actually not looking bad. He's a pretty decent quarterback, and he likes to find Cooks. I think Cooks is going to surprise people. So, yeah, that's my wild card here for our matchup. I think Cooks is going to outperform T. Higgins.
I don't know about that. I mean, T. Higgins has had in his past 5 games, he's had 3 top 5 finishes.
I know, and what goes up must come down.
That is true, but when you have 4 great weapons on this Bengals offense, you're not going to be able to stop everyone. And I think that Higgins will still be able to have a productive outing.
You know, I disagree, but we will move down the list. So
this one's not close.
We'll call that a split right now. So basically, it's still 4-0 you. It's still 4-0 you.
Then we go to the tight end position, and this is the one I can give in a little bit on. I have Hunter Henry. Austin has Travis Kelce. Not really much to say here.
Not much of a debate. Travis Kelce wins that. So now it's 4-1 you. Let's go again. I'll introduce this one. Justin Jefferson against the Packers, against Amon-Ra St. Brown against the Seahawks. Justin Jefferson, in my opinion, wins that matchup. Last time against Green Bay, he destroyed them. He had one of his best games of the season. And Sunday Night Football, I don't expect any difference. Vikings actually are looking better now. Kirk Cousins is playing a lot better in primetime matchups, and Justin Jefferson is just unguardable. I don't care who he's against. So give me Jefferson over St. Brown. And
I mean, you have to give the edge to Justin Jefferson here. I will say, though, the Packers do expect to get Jair Alexander back this week. So I know
last time they had him too, and Justin Jefferson still had a great game. So
which is totally understandable. I will say that I will not be surprised at all if Amon-Ra St. Brown outscores Justin Jefferson this week. Amon-Ra St. Brown's been on a tear. He's had 11 plus targets the past 4 games, and he's finished no worse than wide receiver 28. Jared Goff, Tim Boyle, whoever the quarterback is going to look his way. And Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to have another nice outing.
I expect him to. Hey, listen, I vouched for him last week on the show. I said, Amon-Ra St. Brown, this is the real guy. Like, this dude's real. I said, even week 1, I said, Amon-Ra St. Brown is my he's my sleeper rookie for the year. And I imagine he would have a great final stretch, and he's delivering. But still, Justin Jefferson, you have to expect will do a little better than St. Brown.
Yeah, you got to give the edge to Jefferson just because of his pedigree. But
now we'll go again, 4-2.
So now we move down again to the second flex position. I have Antonio Brown going up against the Jets, and you have Amari Cooper going up against the Cardinals.
And because of last week, I think Dallas has found a groove. I think Amari Cooper now is getting more targets after he complained a little bit about the lack of targets. I think Amari Cooper is going to have the edge. Frankly, the Jets, even though they're not a good team, fact is their defense actually isn't horrible. They play hard every week, and AB is really the only guy on the Bucs that they have to be afraid of, to be honest. So I think Cooper's going to have another big week, and I expect him to outperform Brown. Jett, how do you feel about that?
I disagree. I mean, we've seen Amari Cooper time and time again be very inconsistent. Last week, he had a fantastic matchup against Washington that was missing a good amount of players on their team. And plus, going into that game, they were giving up top 5 most points to opposing wide receivers. And for me, I think Antonio Brown has the edge here because he had 15 targets last week and he scored 19.10 points.
Cooper had 11 last week in one half.
And I get that, but you got to compare the matchups. The Panthers are a much tougher matchup, in my opinion, than Washington. And Brown had 15 targets, over 100 yards, not even a touchdown. AB is pretty much one of the only reliable options on this Buccaneers offense right now, and they play the Jets. So I think it's pretty much a given.
And the Jets have given up the 26th least points to receivers going into this week, while the Cardinals have actually given up the 6th most points to receivers. And Dallas is at home, and they're a much better team at home. So I think Amari Cooper is actually going to outperform strictly because they're at home. It's probably going to be the Fox game of the week against the Cardinals. They're rolling right now. Their defense is rolling. Their offense is rolling. Dak Prescott seemed to find his stride last week. I'm confident Cooper's going to get the job done and outperform Antonio Brown. So I'm going to give myself that. That's 4-3 me. I'll agree with you. I'll split with you on the, Brandon Cooks versus T. Higgins thing. I'll split that with you, but
I don't even think that's a split, to be honest.
To me, it is this week, but Amari Cooper, I think, is going to outperform Brown. I am very confident about that. So again, let's move down one more time.
Yeah, now we go to the quarterback flex. Mine is really up in the air at the moment. I have Lamar Jackson going up against the Rams, while Austin has Jalen Hurts going up against Washington,
who you just alluded to give up a gazillion points. One of the worst defenses in the league, and Jalen Hurts, frankly, looked really good last week in the second half against the Giants. I think he actually started figuring out again how to hit his receivers, and I think their offense is starting to click. And I think Jalen Hurts is going to have a huge game, especially this is a must-win game for the Eagles. They have to win out, basically. I think Hurts is going to outperform Lamar. Lamar is coming in questionable. The Rams are starting to play really good defense as of late, and they're in LA with the home crowd going. It could be Lamar's first game back. If he plays at least, I think Hurts is going to outperform Lamar.
I think if Lamar plays, I think it's going to be pretty much even. I think it's not going to be an edge in this matchup. However, Lamar Jackson hasn't practiced in several weeks now, and I have a feeling that he's not even going to end up playing on this one anyways. So, I mean, as of right now, my option on the bench is Ryan Tannehill going up against the Dolphins. I'm probably going to look to change that because the Dolphins defense has been unstoppable this past several weeks. And it's really going to be tough because there aren't really any other great options to work with. Maybe Derek Carr against the Colts, but even that, that's a tough matchup there too. I think if Lamar Jackson plays, I think it's going to be a lot closer than I initially expected to be.
And if you had to guess right now, who do you think Who do you think outperforms him? You think Lamar Jackson actually can outperform Jalen Hurts?
I think he can. I think he definitely can if he's playing. I mean, it's a must-win game for the Ravens as well,
and it's a must-win game for the Eagles as well. Exactly. And Hurts has the better matchup.
Hurts definitely has the better matchup, but Lamar Jackson's the better player. And if he is healthy in this game, I do think he has a very good chance to either break even or take the edge in this one.
I would have to disagree with you on that, but I understand your point of view. And last but not least, the defensive matchups. I have the Bears going up against the Giants, and you have the Patriots going up against the Jaguars. And frankly, I gotta probably give the edge to you here with the Patriots, especially after last week getting torched by Josh Allen. I cannot imagine they're too happy. They get a very, very mouth-watering matchup against the pathetic Jaguars this week. And they're in Foxborough, so I imagine – and they need to win. So I imagine the Patriots are going to come out with full fire and intensity. And that game's going to be over by halftime.
I mean, both defenses I think are great plays. I do agree that the Patriots should have the edge in this one.
They should.
But then I'm just sitting with the Dolphins defense on my bench. It's a shame I can't just go two defenses in this one. But it's going to be a fun matchup. Well, I think in order for you Austin to have to beat me, you're going to have to put up 200. That's just kind of what I've been accustomed to putting up week in, week out.
You know what? If it's anything like our matchup in our home league last week, I'm going to be very satisfied with the outcome this weekend. You know, in case you forgot that I took you down in our semifinals matchup in our home league.
How can I forget? How can I forget?
And I'm making my second consecutive finals appearance in this league, and no one's ever repeated in our home league. So I cannot wait to be the first one to do that.
I'm making my third consecutive appearance in the third place game. So,
oh, well, you know what? Listen, if I need to make a third place appearance, you're exactly the guy I'm going to go to for that. No one makes a third place appearance like you, Jett.
I appreciate it, Austin.
You're welcome. Right. That's because I care.
Why don't we continue on? We're going off the defensive theme. Why don't we talk about some defensive streams that we like for this week? Austin, why don't you start us off?
I will. My first defensive stream is as I alluded to in my lineup this week, the Chicago Bears going up against the New York Giants. They're going to be at home in Chicago. It's going to be 20-degree weather. Joe Judge did say we would get a mix of Fromm and Glennon. Fromm is just not ready for the league. Glennon is just not good. The whole Giants offense is awful. Last week against Philly, in Philly, keep in mind. I mean, Philly's defense, 10 points allowed, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, one of them for a touchdown, 6 tackles for losses, 192 total yards allowed, 5 3-and-outs. Like, Giants are a poor excuse for a football team with no offense. They have it's a joke. Like, they were a joke. The Bears defense should feast on New York this week. They beat Seattle last week. Whose offense is always capable of putting up 30 points, even though they're not looking super good right now. But so the Bears defense should have an excellent week. And if they're on your waiver wire, you should probably go pick them up.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. For whoever had the Eagles defense last week going up against the Giants, you were definitely happy, and I think it's going to be much of the same with the Bears this week. For me, I mentioned them a little bit earlier. The Miami Dolphins, not only because they're my favorite team, and it might sound a little bit biased, but they have been on fire from the defensive side of the football. They're currently the number 3 defense in fantasy right now, and they've had 4 consecutive top 10 finishes after starting the season off pretty bad. They faced the Tennessee Titans, who, while they did pick up a win against the 49ers last week, they're just not the same offense without Derrick Henry. I get they have A.J. Brown back now, which is a big boost for them, but I think that the Dolphins will get to Ryan Tannehill a bunch of times in this game. They're creative with their formations. I trust Brian Flores to get the job done. And if you've been rolling with the Dolphins defense all this long, no reason to stop at this point.
I would have to agree a lot with that statement. I think the Dolphins defense is, other than the Cowboys, they probably have been the hottest defense as of late. And my final defensive stream, speaking of which, is the Cowboys, who, probably not the most popular defense this week just because they're playing the Cardinals. But if we're being honest here, the Cardinals have not looked good lately at all. The Colts pretty much shut them down last week. The Lions shut them down 2 weeks ago. The Rams practically shut them down a few weeks ago. And Dallas is the number 2 defense in the year right now. Week 13, they let up 17 points. Week 14, let up 14 points. Week 15, only 6. Last week, we saw what they did against Washington. 14 points allowed, 2 interceptions, one of them for a pick 6, 5 sacks, another touchdown on special teams. Like, this defense is for real. They're at home. You know how hard it is to win in Jerry's world. I just don't think the Cardinals get it done. I think Kyler Murray's honestly going to struggle, which is not going to help me in our matchup, Jett. But fact is, you can't deny what Dallas defense is doing right now with DeMarcus Lawrence, Mike Parsons, Diggs on the outside. Just, they're so explosive and so dominant. They get to the pass. They get to the quarterback so quickly. Their pass rush is phenomenal. Their run defense is phenomenal. I just think they're a very good stream, despite the matchup against Arizona and Kyler Murray.
Yeah. The Dallas defense, after what we saw last year, they have totally turned it around. And a lot of it has to do with that Micah Parsons pick they made in this past year's draft. He's not only making a case for defensive rookie of the year, but defensive player of the year as well. Even with the Cardinals showing some explosive signs, earlier in the year, they're just not the same offense that they were. And you can definitely trust the Cowboys defense this week due to that. Yes, the Cardinals could come out and, get things going in the right direction. But from what we've seen them as of late, I don't think that's going to happen. I think you can continue to trust that Cowboys defense. For me, the final defense that I want to touch on is the New Orleans Saints. And obviously this past week, they kind of, they got blown out by my Dolphins. And a lot of that was due because they were missing half their team to COVID. And they should be getting a bunch of those guys back this week. And now they play the Carolina Panthers, who love to throw the ball away, whether it's Darnold, whether it's Cam Newton. The Saints defense is going to have a bounce back week and feast on this Carolina Panthers offense.
Love to keep in mind, the Saints defense really didn't look horrible on Monday night. They didn't look that bad. It was just the fact that the offense could not get anything going and the defense was on the field so much. But let's be honest, it was a 10-3 game at halftime, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah.
The Dolphins really couldn't do much in the first half. The Saints defense is still tough. They play hard every week. So I love their matchup against the Panthers, who just really are. They had such a hot start to the season. How they are, frankly, one of the laughing stocks of the league, believe it or not. So I'm a very big fan of that pick, Jett.
Yeah, I think any of those defensive streams are great plays this week. And next thing I want to move on to waiver wire, pick up some other guys that may be sitting on your waiver wire that we think would be a great fit in your lineup this week to plug and play, even with all the COVID issues going on. You never know when you're going to lose one of your starting pieces. So it's important to have a little bit of depth, even though it is the final week for many people this season. So Austin, who is someone that you're looking at on the waiver wire?
So unless you have Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Mark Andrews, even Kyle Pitts, even though they play against the Bills, if you need a tight end stream this week, I'm a big fan right now of Gerald Everett, the Seattle Seahawks. 5 out of the last 7 weeks, he's had 10+ points. It's all been since Seattle's week 9 bye, and ever since Russell Wilson came back. Last week, he had 16.8 against the Bears, who are one of the best teams against tight ends this year. And this week, he plays the Lions, who are the 10th worst team against tight ends. Now, don't expect him to have a 20-point game, but if you need a guy to give you a guaranteed 10 to 15 points this week, I highly suggest Gerald Everett.
I love that. I love that as well. He's a great pickup, especially like I mentioned before. You never know when your starting tight end's gonna go out because of COVID. So it's definitely a smart pickup, even if you already have one of those top tight ends. But I'm gonna go.
He can also be a flex play too. Everett could honestly be a flex play. I'm actually a big fan now of starting 2 tight ends. I was doing it for a while. Earlier in the year, I was in our home league, at least I was starting Mark Andrews and Mike Gesicki for a while. They were playing really well for me. So don't be afraid to start a tight end at your flex position.
Depending on your situation, it could definitely be an applicable scenario to use. So definitely keep an eye on that. I'm going to go over to the wide receiver position. Now that Adam Thielen is out for the rest of the year, a guy that I want to pick up at the wide receiver position is KJ Osborne of the Minnesota Vikings. 3 of his past 4 games, he has had 15+ PPR fantasy points. Kirk Cousins seems to look his way a lot. When Justin Jefferson's being double teamed, Kirk Cousins is definitely going to look his way. If you're in need for a flex option or just someone you want to put Osborne in over someone you really don't trust as much, I think it's a great option, especially this week going up against the Packers. The Packers defense has not been as great these past couple of weeks, so give me KJ Osborne as a nice streaming option here in fantasy championship weekend.
Well, to go off of that, Jett, I'm going to move to the quarterback position quickly. And if he's available, depending on who your starting quarterback is right now, I love Kirk Cousins this week. In his previous matchup versus the Packers on week 11, he destroyed them. He had 341 and 3 touchdowns. Not to mention Dalvin Cook comes back this week off the COVID list. Not only is he a threat out of the run game, and you have to respect it, which gives Kirk more opportunities to throw. But Dalvin Cook's also a very good guy to have in the passing game. Even last week, without Dalvin Cook, now listen, Madison's a very good backup, but he's no Dalvin Cook. We all know that. And last week against the Rams, it was a hard game, but still, Kirk still threw for 315 yards, threw for a touchdown. He had 1 pick, of course. Still had 16 points against one of the hottest defenses in the league. And now he's going against like you said, against Green Bay, who's struggling as of late. Sunday Night Football, they need the win. I think Kirk's going to have a big game. I expect it to honestly be a shootout. So I love Kirk Cousins this week. Now, obviously, if you need a stream quarterback in week 17, I don't know how the hell you got there to the championship. But again, if you really do need one, Kirk Cousins is the way to go.
Yeah, even if it's just a super flex league, I mean, Kirk Cousins is a good option. I mean, based off their last matchup, it was a shootout. I think we're going to see something very, very similar once again. I'm going to go over to the running back position. Now that Miles Sanders is hurt, you have to look at the next two options, and they consist of Boston Scott and Jordan Howard. For some reason, when the Eagles get down into the red zone, you would think they would use someone like Jordan Howard, but they've been using a lot of Boston Scott. And I think with Miles Sanders out of the lineup, I think Boston Scott's a great pickup, especially in PPR formats. I think he's going to get a lot of the work through the air as well. If they continue to use him in the red zone, which I don't think they should, but if they do, he scored a touchdown last week in the red zone, and when he has a big enough role, he tends to produce. So if you're in need of a running back, whether it's due to COVID or an injury, I think Boston Scott can be a nice streaming option this week.
And now, are you not worried about Jalen Hurts taking those rushing attempts in the red zone? Because we've seen Hurts, frankly, take a lot of those rushing touchdowns away from guys like Miles Sanders all year. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, earlier in the year, like they were giving all those goal line carries to Jalen Hurts, but as the season has progressed, they have given the ball at the goal line to guys like Boston Scott and Jordan Howard. And this past game, Jalen Hurts didn't even run the ball that much. It could be possibly due to his ankle injury that could be lingering. So it's possible that they don't want to run the ball to Jalen Hurts as much just to save his legs. So maybe it's the type of thing where they turn to guys like Boston Scott and Jordan Howard and rely on the running game a little bit more.
All right. I like it. And last but not least, my final waiver wire pick of the week. Now, this is a more high risk, high reward player. I'm going to go back to the Green Bay, Minnesota game. Marquez, Valdez, Scanling. He had his best game of this season back in week 11 versus the Minnesota Vikings. He's a deep threat, and all he needs is just that one deep ball to go his way and get open for one touchdown, and you have your big week. Now, he's a riskier play. He can either have a 22, 25-point week, or he can have a 5-point week. If you're that desperate, if your team's battling a lot of COVID or a lot of injuries, if you really want to go big or go home, he's the guy to do it with, especially against this team, against Minnesota, who typically he plays well against, especially last time they played. But he's probably the most high risk, high reward player I can think of at the moment.
I like that. I mean, think about it. They like to throw the deep ball to Marquez a lot during a game, and if Aaron Rodgers gets a nice ball thrown his way,
yep.
I mean that's 6 points with a touchdown. Plus, if it's a 50-yard touchdown, it's 11 points, 12 points right there.
It's very feasible, especially at home. They're playing at home, Sunday Night Football. You got to think they're Green Bay's going to show up, and I imagine I could totally see Scantling getting open for one deep ball. Going into the stands quickly, celebrating with the fans. So he's a very riskier option, but I think he's going to deliver this week.
I like that a lot. I don't have another player, but my one piece of advice is, like we've mentioned several times before, COVID is still an issue, and just to have backup plans in place, whether it's picking up backup running backs to either any of your starting running backs or any of your opponent's starting running backs. It could make all the difference, especially you don't know when a certain player is going to get placed on COVID list. So just to have backup and contingency options in place is the best way to go, especially in a week where this is where it all matters. It's championship weekend. So you want to have plan A, plan B, plan C ready to go. So you get the win this week.
100%. And with that being said, let's move on to our next segment. Jett, stars that will not show up this week. Stars that are going to lose you your championship matchup. And would you like to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, this guy, he was once one of the top fantasy performers, but injury concerns and injury issues have really dampened his outlook from a fantasy perspective. Saquon Barkley. Yeah, it's going to be very tough to sit someone like him this week based off of all the name value he has, but I would definitely suggest considering it. But if you have a good enough option to replace him, He's clearly not performing well on this banged up Giants offense, discombobulated Giants offense. He had 4 PPR points last week, 15 carries for 32 yards, and it's a tough matchup this week against a good Bears defense. And while he could very well have the type of game where he gets you 15 plus points, I don't know at this point in the season if we can really rely on it. He hasn't had his best finish of the season was back in week 4 where he had 30 points, and it's all been downhill since then. I would try and stay away from Saquon Barkley if you have a good enough option. However, I do understand if you do want to stick with him for one final week.
I would have to agree with that, and it hurts me to say it as a Giants fan, but I mean, Saquon Barkley is not a guy I would ever consider starting right now. He has looked awful late. Really not his fault. It's been just the Giants being terrible. So, yeah, he's just not an option for me. But another guy that I'm going to mention right now that I think is going to have a very down week after a huge week last Thursday versus the 49ers, A.J. Brown. Going up against the Miami Dolphins this week. Miami's defense is looking unbelievable right now. They have not given up over 17 points to a team since week 8. They gave up 26 to Buffalo that week. There's no Julio Jones this week. I believe he's out with COVID. I have to guess correct, right? I believe. I think I put on the COVID list.
I believe so. Yeah, that's correct.
So you got to imagine all attention is going to be on A.J. Brown. That means Xavier Howard's going to be all over him. Now, I understand why you start him because how good he is. I get it, but you should consider sitting him for someone with a little better matchup. I think A.J. Brown's going to have a bad week this week. I really do. And if you do start him, do not expect a big game. Obviously, hope for one, but do not expect one.
Yeah, I'll go with one more guy. For me, this is a guy that has been struggling ever since their bye week. And that guy is DK Metcalf of the Seattle Seahawks. And there's probably been a lot of people out there that have already decided to sit him based on his performances the past several weeks. While he did have a nice long touchdown this past week, that was really all it did. And I get the weather was a bit of a concern in that game. But besides that, he hasn't finished over wide receiver 26 since week 8. For some reason, Russell Wilson and him have not been on the same page in the second half of the season. They've tried to get the ball to him more often, but Russell Wilson just is not the same player that he was in years past. I think if you have someone like an Amon-Ra St. Brown or an Antonio Brown sitting on your bench, I would definitely put someone like that over DK Metcalf in the lineup this week.
100%. DK is one of the premier talents in the league. He is one of the most unguardable receivers, but Russell Wilson just not right ever since that injury. I think he came back way too soon. Understandably so. They needed to make a playoff push. It was falling out of their hands, but it's just not working. So I definitely agree. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Antonio Brown, much better selections than DK this week, which is so sad to say, but it's true. And I want to stay in the wide receiver category. Another guy that I think is going to struggle this week. Now, he had one of the hottest starts to the season. He struggled a little bit in the middle of the season. He's actually picked it up as of late for the most part, especially last week against the Ravens. Jamar Chase. Don't like him this week. Same thing with T. Higgins. Don't like him either. The Chiefs defense, very similar to Miami, is playing out of their minds right now. The Chiefs have not given up over 17 points in 8 out of the last 10 weeks. Burrow's not going to have a lot of time to throw, and he's going to make a lot of rush throws. The Chiefs defense have at least 1 interception per game since week 5, at least 1 fumble recovery since week 8 per game. They're playing their best ball of the year, similar to A.J. Brown. Consider benching Chase for someone like an Amon-Ra St. Brown or an Antonio Brown. And if you start him, don't expect the big game. Obviously, hope for one.
I totally get the thought process behind that. I just think it's going to be very hard to even consider sitting someone like Jamar Chase or even someone like T. Higgins, just because of what they've done for your teams all year. You'd much rather roll with them and they flop than not roll with them and they go off, because obviously they have more of an opportunity to go off than not based off of what we've seen with them throughout the year. It is a tough matchup.
However, even last week, I was talking to one of my friends actually about George Kittle, coming off, 2 30-plus point games and like an 18 or 15-point game And then, last week against the Titans, who came into the week as a top 5 defense against tight ends, kid only had 4 points. He had 3 targets the entire game. And, I know I was saying, Kittle's going to have a big game. The fact is, the stats don't lie. The Titans are one of the best teams against tight ends. And frankly, fortunately for me, I was able to still pull out the win against you, even with the bad game like that. But still, that worried me. And stats don't lie. Jamar Chase is going up against a very tough defense, 22nd. They give up the 22nd least points to receivers, and even AJ Brown going up against a Dolphins team that actually gives up the 6th most points against receivers. But lately, they've been playing so well that stat actually does not matter right now. So, unfortunately, it hurts to say Jamar Chase and AJ Brown, those guys are studs. They're young. They're the future of this league, but I just don't think they're going to get done this week.
It's just going to come down to whether you have a good enough option, because obviously I don't think you should, reach on your waiver wire. I don't think you should be starting someone like a KJ Osborne or Marquez, Valdez, Scanling or something like that.
If you do not have a good backup, like you said, I'm referencing them because you said it, Amon-Ra St. Brown or Antonio Brown, you start them over, to me, guys like Jamar Chase or AJ Brown, but otherwise you go with the guys that got you there.
Definitely.
But Jed, I believe we're going to move on now to one of our last topics of the show, stars that you do believe are going to be league winners this week. So, Jed, start us off.
Yeah, this is not necessarily a star right here, but this is a guy that I think is going to win some fantasy championships this week. And for me, that guy is Devin Singletary of the Buffalo Bills. And for much of the season, the Bills really didn't have a clear number 1 running back in their running back room. But these past several games, the indications are that it is Devin Singletary. He has 15 plus fantasy points in each of his past 3 games. He's coming off a 12 carry game. Previously that, it was a 22 carry game. Zach Moss and Matt Breida are clearly out of the picture here. And this week, he faces off against an Atlanta Falcons defense that really has had troubles stopping the run this year. They're giving up the 9th most points to opposing running backs. I think the Bills are going to get out in front and get out to an early lead here, and they're only going to just pound the ball with this Devin Singletary. I think he has the chance to find the end zone multiple times, and he is going to be a big part of many people winning their matchups this week, in my opinion.
I do happen to like that take a lot. Devin Singletary could really end up being a league winner this week, which is hard to say, but I have to agree. But someone I've been vouching for ever since like week 2 or week 5, earlier in the year. That he was struggling a lot in this team, but I said down the stretch when you need it most, he will come through. Amari Cooper. Last week, after vouching for more targets, raising his voice, in just 1 half alone against Washington, 11 targets, 7 catches, 85 yards, 1 touchdown. Like I said, all in 1 half. But Dax has seemed to have found a stride. They're at home again against a struggling Cardinals defense. The offense, frankly, looks better when Cooper is involved. I expect another big performance this week. Do not be afraid to play him. He's a lock and load wide receiver 1. I believe he'll have another top 10 finish this week for sure. So, Amari Cooper, league winner, week 17.
I like that a lot. Obviously, he kind of ruined my chances last week, but it was coming eventually. It just happened to come at that time.
Yep.
A guy that I think is going to have a big game at the tight end position is Dallas Goddard of the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, they play Washington football team, and last time Goddard faced off against the same Washington defense, he had 7 catches for 135 yards en route to 21 PPR fantasy points, a top 5 tight end finish. I think Jalen Hurts is going to let the ball loose. I think he's going to be looking for Dallas Goddard a ton. I think him and Hurts have developed a nice chemistry as the season has gone on. And the tight end position, yeah, it's still a mess, but if you have Dallas Goddard on your team, I think it's a very good possibility that he puts up 20 plus points, maybe even throws in a touchdown in there, and is a very good piece to your championship teams this year.
I love that a lot. Dallas Goddard for sure. He's such a weapon for that team, and frankly, I think he's their best weapon, even though Devonta Smith is obviously, Devonta Smith, but Dallas Goddard you cannot forget about him. He's dangerous. But one more guy who I believe is going to league winner this week, and again, it hurts me to say this because it's against my team, but David Montgomery is going to have another huge week. Last week, he had his second best performance of the season, 21 attempts for only 45 yards, but he did find the end zone. Not to mention, he had 7 catches for 61 yards and to a 23.6 fantasy point day. Goes up against the New York Giants, who are one of the worst teams against running backs. I believe they're the 9th worst team against running backs, I believe, or 8th worst team against running backs. And I expect David Montgomery to have another huge day. So you lock him in your lineups. He's going to explode this week, and it's going to kill me to watch it happen.
I like that a lot, and I'm looking forward to watching him running all over the Giants defense.
But there is optimism though for me as a Giants fan, because it's actually a win-win for me whether we win or lose, because we actually have their pick. So if we win, they move up in the draft, and if we lose, we just move up in the draft. So either way, it's a win-win. So I just want to see my fantasy guys play well in that game. I don't really care who wins at this point. It's a win-win.
I'll go with one more final guy, going back to the running back position. Rashad Penny of the Seattle Seahawks. I mean,
really?
This guy's been in the league since 2018, and it seems like he's finally becoming the player that we thought he was going to be in his rookie year. Obviously, with no Chris Carson, Alex Collins, and DJ Dallas, they have all been hurt or not really in action at times. And I think Rashad Penny is going to take many fantasy teams to the promised land this week. He faces off against a Detroit Lions team that is giving up the 7th most points to opposing running backs. He's coming off of a 17 carry, 135-yard game against the Chicago Bears. He has had 20 plus fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games. I think Rashad Penny is going to get fed the ball. I mean, he's really the only running back you can trust in that Seattle backfield right now. And I think he's going to have another nice outing. It's about time that Rashad Penny has showed up.
I'm with you. I've been waiting for him to break out since he entered the league. I've had high hopes for him, and finally he's getting his time, and which makes you think, the future for Chris Carson, who cannot seem to stay healthy. So do we see Rashad Penny being the lead back next year? Because if he is, it changes the draft a little bit, but that'll be another topic for another time. And finally, we'll go to our last topic of the day. New Year's Eve's coming up. It's almost 2022. New Year's Eve's on Friday. I cannot wait. 2021, was a fine year, but I can't wait for a new year, new slate, start off fresh. But before we get into next year, Jett, you have any New Year's resolutions?
Yeah, so it's that time of year where we come up with our New Year's resolutions, and I'm not going to go on about my personal resolutions. We're going to talk about some fantasy football resolutions.
That's a given. Of course.
And
no one cares about your personal resolution.
The first one pertains to my life as a commissioner for several leagues, and one thing that I plan on doing is making sure that there are more than one IR spot. I've ran into a lot of issues throughout one of my leagues where guys were just going down left and right, whether it be to COVID or due to injury. I think whether COVID's with us next year, which I hope it's not, I think 2 IR spots are rightfully deserved in all leagues just because of how many injuries we see on a yearly basis. So I vow to make sure that my league has at least 2 IR spots next year.
Well, finally, you opened up your eyes to the truth. Finally, we've only been telling you that for years now, but hey, it only took 5-6 years for you to listen. You gotta learn sometime. So I guess for me, my New Year's resolution for fantasy, at least, is to become a much better drafter. Now, fortunately, in the Blitz League, I actually drafted a great team. I have not made one single trade this year. I've had a couple waiver wire pickups, but mainly in my other leagues, I don't draft that well for some reason. I always build my teams off of trading. I'm a very, very good in-season manager. I always make really good trades that propel me to the championship. But I gotta say, Jett, even though I give you a lot of stuff for fantasy, I gotta say you are a very good drafter. You definitely you see it well. So I need to learn how to draft a lot better next year. Not reach on guys for sure. Probably change my strategy up a little bit. So that's my New Year's resolution.
I like that a lot. And I think we could both learn from one another because obviously trading has not been one of my strengths over the years. And I think we could both, learn from each other's strengths. Another
Yeah.
one of my New Year's resolutions. I'm going to talk about some guys that I want to make sure I get on all of my teams for next year. There's a few guys that I think are going to be nice values in drafts next year, whether it be to injury this year, just a lack of performance. These are the five guys that I hope to have on all of my teams next year: Calvin Ridley, Allen Robinson, Javonte Williams, Terry McLaurin if he has a quarterback, and Kyle Pitts.
That's a very good list. I gotta say that.
Yeah, I'll explain a little bit. I think Kyle Pitts, I think is going to be due for some positive touchdown regression last year. He's been getting a lot of volume, but I think he'll find the end zone a bunch more next year. For Javonte Williams, I think Melvin Gordon will be gone, so Javonte Williams will have that workhorse role. Terry McLaurin, he's a talented receiver, but just has had QB issues this year. And if he gets a solid QB, I think Terry McLaurin is going to get right back to where we started. And then for Calvin Ridley and Allen Robinson, they just have been MIA this year, whether obviously Ridley is dealing with some personal issues, and then Allen Robinson just has not been performing well. I think both of those guys, whether they with these teams or not next year, I hope Robinson's not with the Bears, but I think they will both be nice value picks in fantasy drafts and will both have bounce back seasons next year.
I happen to love that list, especially Terry McLaurin. He's one of the most talented receivers in football. And frankly, if he had a good quarterback, he would not have to make so many contested catches because he actually leads the league in contested catches right now with like 25, I believe. I don't remember off the top of my head, but that's a very good list. And those are a lot of good value picks for next year. I love it. I guess I'll go one more. This, another New Year's resolution I have. This is more realistic. I'm just not a very good drafter, but I'm going to try my best. This one's a lot more realistic and more probable to take you down again next year. And this time to actually beat you in a regular season matchup. I never seem to beat you in regular season. You always seem to get the upper hand. I beat you when it matters, but I like to beat you always. So my resolution is to take you down regular season next year.
Awesome. I like that. It's definitely gonna be tough. I think this is kind of a resolution, but I don't want our matchups to be close. It's just too stressful. I want to start blowing you out.
Dude, let's be honest here. You're going to miss looking at your phone every 2 seconds on Sundays. Seeing who did what. Seeing the score change every 2 seconds. You're going to miss it.
It doesn't get any better than that.
Being on the edge of your seat, hoping you get the upper edge against your opponent. You are going to miss it a lot. And
it doesn't get any better than going into a Monday night game, needing a certain amount of points from a player and getting that. It's just the flip side of it. When it doesn't pan out, then it's very demoralizing. But that's the point of the game. You're gonna win some, you lose some, and that's just that.
Well, I guess we have time for one more little question, Jett. Who's your upset of the week this week? Talking NFL. Do you have any upsets this week?
There's actually a lot. I was looking at the schedule earlier, and there's a lot of upset potential. I think, in my opinion, it's going to be tough to pick one just because I feel like there are so many good options. But I'll go with one. We talked about them briefly before the Cardinals Cowboys game. The Cowboys are favored right now, 5.5 points. I just think that the Cardinals are too good of a team to keep losing. They're not. I don't think they're going to go on a big losing streak. I think they find a way to get a win. We've seen how the Cowboys can be inconsistent at times, and I think the Cowboys defense will be fine. It's just a matter of if the Cowboys offense is going to show up once again. I think there's a very good chance they do, but there's also a very good chance that they don't.
Wow.
I think Kyler Murray and this offense is going to get right back on track. I know they have no DeAndre Hopkins, but I think Kyler Murray is going to find a way to get it done, and he's going to walk into Dallas and come away with a win.
That's a bold take, Jett. Listen, in terms of our matchup, I hope you're right. I hope Kyler Murray has one of those games, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Dallas is feeling too good right now, and they're at home. If it was in Arizona, I might actually agree with you. But I don't know, in Dallas, I just don't see it. But again, we'll see what happens. But I guess my upset of the week is going to be Miami Dolphins. On the road against Tennessee, but they marched into New Orleans on Monday and took care of business. And Tennessee right now, no Julio Jones. The Dolphins are feeling so good right now. They just got Waddle back, and last week who had an excellent game. I think the winning streak continues at Tennessee. I really do.
The reason I didn't go that direction because I don't really think it should be considered an upset. I think the Dolphins are a better team at the moment, in my opinion.
Strictly off of what the point spread.
I know they're Tennessee's favorite right now, which I get. It's in Tennessee. Tennessee is the better team record wise.
Yes. Only by 2 games though. That's it.
Yeah, I think from a Dolphins perspective, I just want to talk a little about it. Obviously, our last 2 games, we get to face off against our former quarterback, Ryan Tannehill, and one of our all-time rivals in Bill Belichick and the Patriots. So it's going to be a fun rest of the way.
And frankly, facing up against Tannehill, some would think Tannehill's going to have a great game, going up against his former team. But I think Tannehill's going to grip that ball a little too tight this week. I think he's going to be trying a little too hard to make something happen. And this is why I think Miami's going to come out with the win.
I mean, a lot of these guys played with Tannehill, so they know how he wants to play. Him. Yeah.
They know him. And I think Tannehill's going to, like I said, grip that ball a little too tight and make some error throws. So we will see. But that's my upset of the week. And Jett, do you actually happen to have the pick'em standings?
Yes, I do. I'm glad you brought that up. It was another great week for both of us. I believe we tied once again. Yep, we tied with a record of 11-5. I have a record overall of 83-49. Austin, you have a record of 81-54. So you're right. You're there. I mean, it's just right there. One week has the ability to change everything.
Yep, I need one week. My God. Well, all right.
We'll have to see. So
we'll put in our picks after the show, but I guess we officially reached the
20
end.
episodes, and this will be our temporary break until we start gearing up for the fantasy football offseason once again.
Jett, I can't. I just want to say, when we talked about doing the show back, last summer, I'm not gonna lie to you, I was a little nervous. I never done a podcast before, but you had some experience in doing this with you. It's been an amazing opportunity, and I've had the best time doing it, especially with you, one of my best friends. So I appreciate you doing this with me. Had the best time. I apologize if I've given you, given you a lot, talk a lot of crap to you. Excuse my language, but I've talked a lot to you about your season, about your teams, but I've had the best time doing this with you. And I can't wait to make some more magic next year.
No, of course, I love doing with this you as well. Obviously, we've gone back and forth many times, and it's all it's all from a place of love. I've loved doing this with you. Obviously, we're very close, and that's never going to change. But we'll be back, and we'll be back ready to go next year, and we will have more great content, more great segments, and we will get you ready for draft season. Right going into the regular season and beyond that. So we hopefully you guys will stick around. We'll definitely be back in the future, and we appreciate everyone listening and taking the time to just hear what we have to say.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And Jett, send us off.
All right, for one temporary final last time, if you cannot handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. Thank you everybody so much.
Thanks everybody, appreciate you all. And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yeah.